Now, just prior to coming over here today, I had the opportunity to address the Alaska Workforce Investment Board. They're meeting over at Centennial Hall. As I've said before, and I said to them, I want to repeat to you all, I believe that we as individuals, we all need to work. We're created to work. And that's why, as part of that AGIA legislation, we also included a project labor agreement to guarantee Alaska hire for the pipeline jobs that'll come, and an Alaska preference in hiring. That's what the project labor agreement, or the PLA, is all about. That's one of the provisions in this legislation called AGIA that's in play right now. Legislators, some are looking at trying to yank that provision out. We want to make sure that it's Alaskans getting the job, so a PLA, we believe, will help ensure that. That's just a detail of the legislation. It's so important to us because, as Emil Nadi has reminded me before the pipeline, TAPS, was built, there was about 80% unemployment in Alaska's villages. And today, all those years later, more than a generation later, you know what unemployment is in too many of our villages? It's 80% still. Now, it's nonsensical for us, it's insanity for us to keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Expect that somehow magically in our villages, job opportunities are going to just somehow be provided without us playing a proper role in state government. One thing we can do in state government, playing a proper role to make sure that our villages have the training opportunities and the job opportunities, is when we craft legislation that we believe will get a gas line built, is to have a PLA in there, making sure that we have some guarantee that it will be Alaskans hired. We won't have to import our workforce. We'll grow our own, our young people in Alaska, seizing the opportunities that will come with the good economic development that AGIA, the gas line, will bring. So we're working to change those numbers, those unemployment numbers in our villages, and to make sure there are all those opportunities for Alaskans. We want to marry economic development with workforce development and education. That formula spells good jobs for Alaskans now and in the future. And that means promising careers, not just jobs for our youth, but careers, legacy jobs. And I would ask you, even, if I may be so bold, for your help and your support on some of this. In particular, the training part of this, training Alaskans for the jobs and providing an environment in which jobs can flourish. When we get a gas pipeline going, I want to see jobs going to those kids growing up in our villages. My husband, he's an example that I look at and I say, Todd Palin is what others can become, and I say this respectfully and affectionately. Todd, an Alaska native, growing up in rural Alaska in Bristol Bay, and then went to school for a bit in Glen Allen, growing up in these small communities. He was able to capitalize on some VOTEC curriculum in the public schools at the time, where he learned to build and to fix things and to work with his hands, and that's the way so many Alaskans are wired. And the skills that Todd gained back then in school have resulted in him having this great job up on the North Slope. He's worked up there for 19 years now. The job provides so well for our family. I want other Alaskans to be able to have that same opportunity Todd's had. It's a week-on, week-off schedule. That allows him to still live some of the subsistence lifestyle, those activities that he grew up with and just cherishes out in Bristol Bay. It allows him to commercial fish still. It allows him to run and win the Iron Dog still. It allows all those things that so many of us live in Alaska for, you know, the beauty of the great outdoors, to be able to be a part of. A job like that allows it, and we owe that to the job training opportunities that he had growing up in rural Alaska, because at the time the state focused on a VOTEC curriculum in the schools. So that's important to realize that there is that success there. As a result of VOTEC curriculum, we need to focus on that. My workforce development priority is Commissioner Nadi's focus, and I'll work to make sure that the high unemployment rates in our villages is lowered. And we must think outside the box, and we will think outside the box to provide as many opportunities as we can. I also recognize, though, that energy issues are plaguing our villages now, and it seems that there's little relief in sight. We have to change that. What I hear most often when I travel to the bush is the worry and concern about the high cost of energy. And that's not fair. We're state in the union when it comes to energy sources, but the high cost of living, it's tough enough out there, and then rural Alaska then, on top of that, has the burden of the high fuel costs. I know that energy controls the cost of everything, and that throughout most of the state, everything must come in from the air, and that only hurts rural Alaska even more. I know and understand that people are migrating away from our rural areas, away from the villages, unfortunately, because it costs too much to simply survive being there. Homes are for sale and jobs are unfilled, and that's just not healthy. I understand people want to work in the bush but just can't afford it because of the high cost of living. There are a couple of ways I'm trying to help. First of all, I included in my budget, in the state budget, full funding for the Power Cost Equalization Program to help ease some burden there, and we're still fighting for those dollars. And thankfully, again, as we have legislators here, these are the good guys. These are the ones helping me with those budget items that are going to be needed to provide services for the state. We'll also continue to manage the state's fish and game for abundance for our rural areas. The one piece of help that you have is subsistence, of course, though, with the high cost of food. And I'll continue to aggressively defend our predator control programs, all those tools that we have to be able to provide for that higher population of moose and caribou, the game to feed our families. Additionally, as promised, I've tasked numerous individuals and departments to focus on and think about renewable energy sources and how we can harness those sources to help you and to reduce costs. Sources like the geothermal and the wind, just to name a couple. We have great potential here in Alaska for the alternative. And that's why I've requested funds for an Alaska energy inventory in my capital budget. We need to identify all sources of energy over this state and finally be able to put that information into an electronic map and do something with it. Once we've done this, we can take the next step and identify the right technology and hardware to convert those alternative sources into energy. And if we identify the sources that are closest to our communities and match it with the right technology, we can bring down these extraordinary costs to a level that allows people to live where they want to live. And please know that even in these final days of the session, I haven't forgotten about rural Alaska in terms of the dollars that need to get into the communities themselves. Not only does my budget have funding to help municipal governments and school districts with the increases needed for the state's pension plan, PERS and TERS, but there's also $48 million to distribute to local governments for basic operations and revenue sharing. I'm still working to get those priorities solidified and adopted by the legislature. The state's wealth, it's vast. We are a rich state, but too often state government holds on to that wealth and doesn't trickle it down into our local communities. Municipal revenue sharing allows for that wealth to trickle down and help provide services and projects on the local level. Many legislators who also feel that the longevity bonus, that it shouldn't return, I disagree with them. This is another part of our budget. I've not forgotten the number of people from villages especially who talked to me about helping elders who had received the longevity bonus. The state government cut it off prematurely and I think unfairly, and we need the money. A lot of villagers they need the money just to help with those energy costs that I just talked about. It was a broken promise to cut that program off prematurely. So we've reinstated funding for the longevity bonus, and we'll see if that survives this legislative session.